Hello, I'm still Dorian Ellen Bildotan, more or less. I'd like to make a video now, with God's help, on a very different level than the last video I made. This video is going to be about the most valuable piece of real estate in creation, which is the field of consciousness. One of the things that we need to learn how to do is to be able to act in the field of consciousness on different levels. And so while there's great importance in political action on a certain level, we also need to be acting in the field of consciousness above that, and knowing where from the political situation, such as it exists, derives. Someone who goes by the name of Charles Ponzi wrote to me, "We need people of strong moral character to stand up for truth. We want to be free from fake money. We want to be free from government mind control slavery. We are sick of wars, corruption, and immorality. We want everyone," and that is capitalized, "to be sovereign and free." Charlie, if you're going to write things that are this pertinent, own it. This should be written in your own name and with your own face put to it, because this stuff is important. And this is what, with God's help, I want to talk about today. We all inherit a field of consciousness in accordance with our merits. But that which we do with it is entirely up to us. That means that someone who was born into having a very rich field of consciousness, who doesn't work that field, who abandons it, who allows it to lie fallow, is not going to get as much out of that field as someone who may have been born with a tract of consciousness land, which is not as rich, but they work it. And such a person is going to get a bumper crop. You have been told that you have to worry about losing your soul. You need to be a lot more afraid of losing your soil and losing your soul, that is the sun. All of space, and most especially the earth, is the physical manifestation at any given time of all of the conscious beings that are generating consciousness, whose consciousness is becoming physical reality. You can think of Earth as a map of the collective fields of consciousness interacting in as like a net, like a lattice, and becoming real, becoming actual. The earth does not have to look the way it now does. It can take an infinite number of forms. The reason why it looks the way it does presently, beautiful as the surface is, And interesting as the subterranean levels are, is because most human beings today are not able to access their own subconsciousness. There is no difference whatsoever between the subterranean and subconsciousness. The same layout exists in your field of consciousness that exists on the earth. That is to say, buried under the surface of your consciousness are all the layers of your history. There are underground mines down there. There are underground oceans down there. And insofar as they are transparent to you, they are transparent in reality. The fact that Earth is mostly dense matter, which is not transparent, and the fact that it's so difficult to get down to those levels is a function of the fact that most people are not in control of their own minds. Your mind is a mine of treasures. If it is not yours, if you cannot say this mine is mine, and I'm going to mind my mine. I have mined treasures from my mine because this is mine. If you cannot say that, if you're not doing that, then someone else is going to come into your field of consciousness and take it over. If you are not acting as in full ownership of the field of consciousness that you have been given, if you are not consciously deciding which areas of it you are going to allow to lie fallow because you want them to be fallow to regenerate, which areas of it you want to put out for pasture for others to graze in, and which areas you wish to cultivate, and which areas you wish to build civilization on. If you are not in full control of that, somebody else is going to come into your field of consciousness and take it over, because nobody is going to allow that kind of wealth to go unused if they have the ability to take it over. The Hebrew word demayon, I have said in other videos, means likeness, and it also means imagination. There are two words that derive from the Hebrew word demayon. One is dominion, and the other is demon. If you do not exercise full dominion over your demayon, over your imagination, others are going to come in and they are going to be a demonic presence in your field of consciousness. They are going to be a parasitic presence in your field of consciousness. The most important thing that we must do if we are going to get to the higher levels of consciousness, the higher levels of control over the field of consciousness, is to get our demayon, our imagination, which becomes the likeness of the way our world looks, under our control. David's name is 14. And those are the letters Daled and Yud. Those are the letters Daled and Yud that are in Dimayon. You cannot enter the kingdom of heaven until you have gained mastery over your own imagination and are able to translate your imagination into actuality. That's not the only thing that in your mind you have to get control of, but that's where you need to start. That is the core. How do we do that? Some years ago, I made a video called the Genuine Kabbalah, the Real Kabbalah, Path of the Just, in which I updated information which is in Rabbi Chaim Luzzato's book, Path of the Righteous, Path of the Just, and brought it up to present times, because some of the suggestions that he makes are too difficult and I think too stringent for our times. I made that video, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and very, very kind and good man by the name of James Rogers saw value in that video and he re-uploaded it about 4 years ago. I'm going to link to it. Those are the basic exercises that we have to do in order to gain mastery over our abilities. That's not the furthest level of self-control, but that's the beginning. All of us have more or less compassion, more or less a generosity, more or less serenity. Even if we were born with less than someone else, if we cultivate it, we're going to get a bumper crop. Because Hashem is much more concerned with how much effort we put into cultivating that which we were given than how much we had to start with. We actually are paid with the harvest of our effort, not according to how rich our field was to begin with. One of the most important things that we have to do in order to be able to gain mastery over our minds and feelings, it's not one or the other. Consciousness is both emotional, it's both affective and intellectual. It's both. You need a sail and a rudder, right? And the one is not more important than the other, although sometimes we have to put more emphasis on the one than the other in order to develop something. And that's a matter of intuition to know which is needed at the time. In order to be able to get control over our cognitive abilities and our affective abilities, those emotions are what actually get those things that our imaginations come up with in motion, is to be able to induce peace in our hearts at will. When we are at peace, when we can bring peace about in our own hearts, that is when everything is most in focus. As long as we are nervous, under tension, so our energies are being scattered and frittered away, and we don't have that laser focus that we need in order to be able to translate that which arises in our imaginations into reality. We tend to think that a laser focus would be sharp. Actually not, it's peaceful. It's when you get into that perfect flow of peace that it all comes together, and that which is in our imagination can actually be translated into actuality. We all have the ability to create peace. Sometimes we don't notice it, and it's worthwhile to develop the cultivation of mindfulness to notice the peace that's already in our worlds. Anything in our lives that is not chaotic, that is not breaking down, that is not causing us distress, that is not, should be noticed. We tend to allow our imaginations to wander to that which is chaotic. In fact, we should be putting our attention on that which is not chaotic. Do not take these things for granted. Anything that is not falling apart in your life, everything that is not causing you or anyone else distress, anything that is not an immediate danger is an expression of your current ability to be able to create peace in the world. Notice that. Notice what it looks like, and notice how you feel when you interact with that, and start to get onto that feeling more and more. We have to be able to induce peace in our hearts. Peace can never come from the outside. It has to be internally induced. And in that state, first of all, the ideas that arise in our minds when we are at peace are positive ideas. It's very difficult to be feeling peaceful and thinking about something destructive, right? Once we can induce peace in the heart, the mind kind of lines up with that, and the ideas that arise spontaneously in our minds are peaceful ideas. And they tend to be very creative ideas. And then we can go about either doing it physically or on higher levels, setting nature into motion to form it, and even calling upon others' abilities to help you build this in the world. Those who are of a like mind and share our visions, we can also call out to their subconsciousness, and the idea arises in their minds as well, and it becomes a global cooperation. To get to that level, though, we have to be able to induce peace in our hearts. I'd like to speak about the word shochen, which means to abide in the male singular. We can look at that word in any number of ways, but what we should immediately look at is the Shin and the Vav, which together is 306. That is the word yotzer, which means to form. Okay? The root yetzer is formation. Now, unfortunately, the rabbis got caught up on that same value as being kippur, which they looked at as atonement. Because they had lost control over their imaginations, they were no longer seeing Shin and Vav as Yotzer, as the one who forms. They could no longer do that. And I'll show you why in a minute. So they tended to look at it in a dark light and saw it as needing to atone for something, for their sin. And that mistake unfortunately found its way into Christianity as well, and people got more hung up on the idea of making atonement than actually knowing how to terraform, to knowing how to create forms in the field of consciousness. Why didn't the rabbis look at Shi and Vav as Yotzer, and they looked at it as Kippur? Why did they look at it as needing to atone? Because they weren't looking at the second part of the word shochen, which is ken. Ken is part of the root kaf vav nun, which means to intend, and it means to establish. But the word can is also to be sincere. Yeah? It is also to be sincere. Kaf vav and nun sofit, which is 726, is one of the values of it is ha-chazon, which is the vision. And the shin and the vav, we said, is yotzeo. So shochen, the one who abides, is the one who can make their vision be formed. But in order to do that, that person has to be ken. That person has to be sincere. You cannot translate your inner vision into external actuality until you are sincere. And what do we need most to be sincere about is what our friend Charles Ponsley wrote. We want everyone to be sovereign and free. We want peace for everyone. When we get to the level where we sincerely want peace for every being on every level, as we want it for ourselves, then we have gotten to the level of not just love your fellow, but it's love everyone as you love yourself. The Buddhists have an idea of non-differentiation. Clearly there is differentiation in the different levels of existence. But what has to be undifferentiated is the general desire for everything to be at peace, including you. When we are sincere in our desire for peace, we have reached a level upon which we can translate what is in our field of consciousness into what is in the field of external reality that people can actually walk on, and animals can actually graze on, and plants can actually grow on, and stones can sparkle on and provide a solid base for us to stand on. I would suggest that you take a look at those videos. It's in 2 parts because I think I was so new to YouTube, I had to split it up into 2 parts. True Kabbalah, the path of the just, and the kinds of ways in which we have to gently bring our abilities under control, because no one is born with maximum level ability to create peace, maximum level generosity, maximum level compassion. These are actually cultivated in the field of consciousness. This is the actual agriculture of consciousness. And we have to work that field. Those exercises will show us how we can do that. And once that starts to become a part of who we are, other parts of how to integrate consciousness start to become apparent to us, and we can proceed to very high levels of knowledge of ourselves, and translating that into the world. We can never know, in the true meaning of the Hebrew word ladat, when you say ani yodea in the masculine singular, ani yodat in the feminine singular, we can never know anything unless we have created it. I'm going to say that again. everything that we perceive as pre-existing, that we did not bring into being, or we do not know how we brought it into being because it sprang from our subconscious that we're not yet in control about, we can't know that. We can have an opinion about it, we can comment about it, but we don't really know for sure that it exists. The only way that you will ever know anything is if you make it all by yourself. Peace.